Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Lewin, and I want to welcome you to episode 7 of my series called Book Notes. And this is a series that I started to pull some books off my bookshelf that I've read some many years ago and some just recently, and go through some of the highlighted portions and the notes that I had taken and share some of the wisdom with you. So I hope you find it helpful. So for this episode 7, I have chosen a book by Suzy Welch called 10, 10, 10. There's her name. Suzy Welch, 10, 10, 10. Love it, Suzy. Thank you so much for writing this book. And first of all, one of the ways that I like to start out is telling you how I came across the book. Because some books are given to you, some books find you, some books you find. So I was in the airport on a business trip about to go across the country, and it was the year 2010. And there were a lot of things on my mind, decisions that I needed to make. And I was looking for a way to make these decisions. Two of them were professional and two were personal. And I was really struggling. I was a working mom with 3 kids at home. So I knew a lot of the same challenges that Suzy described in this book. Anyway, I was standing in the airport about to board the plane, and I think this was on one of the bestseller lists or recommended lists with the business books. And so I picked it up, took it on the plane with me, opened it up, and before I got to the end of the first chapter, I had already shut the book. I later read it, but I had already shut the book, gotten my notebook out, and started making a 10, 10, 10 notes for all 4 of these decisions that I needed to make. So it was a huge benefit to me at a time in my life when I was facing a lot of very complex decisions. So I want to thank her for that. Now, what is 10, 10, 10? Well, the way Suzy describes it on page 13, chapter 1, is she found it to be a way that she could start making her decisions differently, proactively, by deliberately considering their consequences in the immediate, present, the near term, and the distant future. And she goes into a whole story. She was in Hawaii on business with her children, and she goes into a whole story about making decisions because she had been in a series of decisions that she didn't really like the outcomes of, which I think a lot of us can find ourselves in those positions. So what she thought of was 10, 10, 10, which is brilliant in its simplicity, and it can be applied so many different ways. So you think of the 3 10s, 10, 10, 10, as being metrics of time. So they don't have that. In her example, it's 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years. But for you, it could be 10 seconds, 10 days, and 10 months. When you're depending on the decision that you're facing at that moment and what choices you need to make. So it's 3 different increments of time, but you literally slow down and you start thinking about a decision you want to make and how that would impact near term, medium term, long term. And if there's no consequence, medium term or long term, then really make the best decision in that moment. But if what you're facing right now is a tough decision, but that it's going to have a huge impact down the road, then you clearly want to put that down the road weight into this decision that you're making today. Suzy then goes on to share with us some of the science behind decision making and the different studies that have been done on how humans make decisions. And what was interesting is that for a long time, there was the expected utility theory that people would always make the best decisions based on the benefits to themselves on the outcomes. But the problem with that theory that was in application is that people don't always think rationally. And she goes on to talk about in this chapter when she's explaining why expected utility theory is inconsistent with reality, in that there are so many forces that undermine our rationality. She talks about that some of those being time pressure, one, peer pressure, which is a big one, um, lack of information, which can be another big one, and information overload, so much information that you can't make a decision. So some of those things that you want to be thinking about is how do you make decisions when you're in a moment of stress? And we know that when you're in a moment of stress, your frontal lobes are not operating to their highest capacity. And so you're really sort of responding to the stress in your decision making. Well, the 10-10-10 system gives us that pause, gives you the opportunity to say, wait a minute, okay, I have to make a decision pretty soon. What's the immediate, the short term, and the long term consequences of maybe two or three options or the decision that you've decided you're going to make, and you need to be prepared for that. So I love it in that way, is that the decision making is not rational with most humans, but if we make that pause during those moments of important decisions, and then later I've integrated it into almost all my daily decisions, then you're going to be a very effective decision maker and making great choices moving forward, or at least feel more confident about the decisions you are making. I hope that helps. The book then goes on to share more about how the 10-10-10 approach can support you in your friendships, in parenting, in your career. And she does spend a good amount of time on using it as a way to navigate your career and making decisions in your career. I really liked chapter 6. And chapter 6 was on called You Can Get There From Here, which I think is a very hopeful name for a chapter talking about careers. And she offers some questions to the reader to ask themselves to gain more clarity on whether a position is for them, or if they're in a right position or considering the right positions. And so I'm going to let you share with you now what those 4 questions were in her words from the book. So, number 1, does my job allow me to work with my people, those who share my responsibilities about life? Or do I have to zone out, fake it, or put on a persona to get through the day? That's question 1. Question 2, does my job make me smarter by stretching my mind, building my skills, and taking me out of my comfort zone? Question 3, does my job open doors for me? And question 4, does my job give me meaning? And I thought those are really excellent for evaluating your current position or any position that you're considering in the future. The book has so many great real life examples, both in Suzy's life and in the life of people that have reached out to her, that have used the method prior to her writing the book. And so I really enjoy that. I think that you can find any situation to apply 10-10-10, and it's simple enough and it's easy enough to explain. I use it in my one-on-one coaching module called Confident Decision Making. So when I'm working with a client on the ways that they make decisions, I like to offer 2 or 3 different approaches depending on the client. And 10-10-10 is always in my arsenal as something that I like to share out. So I think it has been a gift to receive this, both for me personally and for those that I have worked with. So I want to thank Suzy Welch for 10-10-10 and encourage anyone to get it on their bookshelf and reference it when you can. It's been a real pleasure to have and to share. So that's the end of episode 7 for Book Notes. I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.